Well, Penacony certainly is fun. We got a good old murder mystery on our hands, fellas, and given the overall vibe of Penacony, really makes you want to throw on the fedora and long jacket, let the jazz music take over, and when you sternly reject sex from the femme fatale, you utter but one sentence in your raspy voice you've acquired because you began smoking at the age of 2. The streets never sleep, and neither do I. Jokes aside, Penacony's first story quest starts off with a bang. Even 3 people die. That's gotta be a record, my nigga. God damn. Firefly, Robin, and the Duke Infernal all apparently met their demise. We were introduced to yet another emanator after Herda, one who brings death no less, who's taken up a false identity as a Galaxy Ranger. Everyone's after something known as the Watchmaker's legacy. And finally, the entire world of Penacony's dream is sinking into the deep sea, where monsters that herald death await, putting everyone in the dreamscape at risk. So a lot of fun questions, but once again, before we start to answer these, we must ensure that we are all on the same page, and given there was a whole lot of dream fuckery going on here, let's just summarize, huh? The story starts with us warp jumping to Penacony before something strange happens to the Trailblazer. We get visions of things yet to come, such as our meeting with Acheron, Firefly with her hand over her chest hurriedly moving somewhere, and Robin with a concerned look on her face. When we open our eyes, we are greeted by Acheron, who tells us we are currently in the border between reality and the memory zone, called a dreamscape. We happen to be lucky enough to share the same one as Acheron. However, given she referred to us as another one, we were not the first person to do so, but she never tells us who that is. Acheron guides us out, but before we leave, she asks us a question. If we have met her somewhere before. Interestingly enough, the text goes red for this, and it's a theme with certain phrases she uses. However, it's different from when Kafka's text changes color, showing her what are they, her mind control powers? Acheron tells us her memory is abysmal, but that we remind her of an old friend who once crossed blades with her. She asks us a few more questions based on morality, each one laced with red, before she seemingly kills us in the dreamscape with tears in her eyes, sending us to the real world. When we finally get to Penacony's hotel, we meet a bellboy named Misha, who takes us inside. At the desk, we have some trouble checking in due to Don Hung's name being in the system, as opposed to ours, given we weren't yet a nameless when the family invited the Astral Express. It's here we meet Adventure Time, who's a senior manager at the IPC, Sunday, who's a representative for the family, and Robin, who is a universally renowned singer and Sunday's younger sister. It's worth pointing out that in our meeting with Robin, both Welts and March 7th noticed her voice sounded off. Sunday, being a representative of the family, sorts out our situation and sends us off to our rooms. As Marge and the Trailblazer head off to check out the hotel, Himiko explains to Elle that there was more to the invitation they received than meets the eye. She reveals the invitation had another part that invited guests to find the legacy of the Watchmaker, and thus answer the question, why does life slumber? She also reveals that the invitation came in a music box that had off-key notes identical to the frequency of the warp jump used by the Express, to which Welt confirms is a distress call used exclusively by the Nameless. Welt then adds he picked up on strange statements in their run-in with Sunday, which suggested the possibility that the family weren't the ones who sent out the invites, and that there may be a third unknown party involved in all of this. When we finally get to our rooms, we see Aventurine waiting for us, where he asks us for help retrieving something in Penacony that belonged to the IPC first. He then tells us he wants our help because he somehow came to learn of the Stellaron placed in our body. Aventurine then does some black magic fuckery before Acheron shows up and asks us what we're all doing in her room. The magic trick unfortunately ends there, and Aventurine leaves. However, what happens next is interesting. Depending on your dialogue choices, your interaction with Acheron actually changes drastically. In one instance, she genuinely believes this to be her room. However, in another, the text goes completely red and she tells us she knew this wasn't her room, but rather saw Aventurine snooping around and intervened to ensure our safety. Regardless, the ending bit remains the same, with Acheron asking us if we have met her somewhere before. She then tells us that we were but a flashing thought in a dream she had on her way here, and she introduces herself as Galaxy Ranger Acheron before eventually leaving. We then prepare to enter the dream world, but before we do, we see a scene of Dr. Ratio in Adventure Time that plays out, where we learn of the thing that Adventure Time wants returned to the IPC is the entirety of Penacony itself, given it was once a prison run by the IPC. Once we awaken in the dreamscape, we find ourselves in the Gallery of Thoughts with Misha, who guides us to a portal to Golden Hour, one of the 12 dream worlds, one in which it's always 11:59 and tomorrow does not come. come. After crash landing, we run into Robin and Sunday once more, and Robin performs a Jedi mind trick to get us acclimated to the dreamscape. After walking around a bit, we find ourselves in front of an eyeball known as Dr. Edwards, whom, look, I'm finna be completely honest with y'all, I don't know what the fuck happened here. We were supposed to have like a dream recollection about the Eon Acaville, but instead I just got like a horny ass Don Hung just going, oh, I'm guilty. Like 4 times. I don't know, bro. I don't know. We soon overhear a commotion and head out to investigate, where we see a girl surrounded by 2 officers. She then scurries on over to us, where we learn the 2 officers are after her because they believe her to be a stowaway. Then, an extremely handsome man known as Gallagher, who's an officer from the Bloodhound family, tells the 2 lower-ranking officers to fuck off, as the stowaway they were supposed to be looking for is a guy with silver hair and not a girl with silver hair. It's weird. I'm pretty sure he was lying to save us, but I don't know. The girl introduces herself as Firefly and explains she's a local of Penacony, as thanks for saving us, she gives us an extremely convoluted tour of Golden Hour, but soon explained the reason she did this was due to the fact that a man has been following us. The man then approaches us, where it's revealed to be none other than our OG, Sampo Kowski, the greatest hustler this side of the multiverse. Sampo then offers to give us the rated R tour of Golden Hour compared to that rated G shit that Firefly gave us. However, when we try to enter the ever infamous Peppy Pepeshi salon, we in Firefly don't have VIP cards, so they don't let us in. Sampo then has to do something else, but before we can do it, we first have to play an arcade game that turns us into a little gremlin named Hanu. After retrieving the treasure, Sampo leads us back to Dr. Edwards, where we enter another dream bubble in the underworld of Belobog. There's a lot of trash can people, and they tell us they want our help in rebelling against the Garbage King, who was once their king but became evil after the Eternal Freeze. After helping some trash cans out, we become their new king, and soon lead the charge against the evil Garbage King, who turned out to be none other than as Sampo Koski. However, Firefly cockblocks us, and we don't get to see how it ends. Sampo then tells us the dream was a metaphor for current-day Penacony, and that we will find out the truth soon enough. He then warns us of Firefly, who had seemingly vanished, questioning how a local can be so uninformed about the area and wonders who she really is. When we find Firefly, who ran off, she apologizes and confirms she is indeed hiding things from us. Correcting her cover story, she tells us she is in fact not a local and that the Bloodhound family are after her for a reason. She then offers to take us to her secret base, but right after we are about to set off, we run into the mascot of Penacony, Clocky, who can only be seen by those who are kind, honest, and innocent. Notably, Firefly cannot see Clocky, indicating she's none of those things. Clocky tells us his friend Misha is in trouble, and when he takes us to him, we see Misha and Acheron surrounded by a gang. Clocky gives us mind control powers that allow us to change the mood of people in the dream world. We use it on the gang leader, who then leaves. Misha, who can also see Clocky, thanks us, and no, by the way, for those wondering, Acheron cannot see Clocky. Acheron then wishes us well on our date and heads off. Thank you, Acheron. Thank you. We then head off to Firefly's secret hideouts, a fucking 8-year journey all the way in Narnia, this fucking bitch is. At the highest point in Penacony, Firefly tells us the beauty of Golden Hour, before she tells us she really is the stowaway. She says her hometown was destroyed, and since then she has become a refugee. She came to Penacony because the Harmony accepts all, but tells us she has a wish she wants to achieve in the real world. She then tells us she is suffering from a disease known as entropy loss syndrome, and honestly, it's a lot better if I just let her explain it. It's beautiful.
Entropy loss syndrome. Have you heard of this term? It's a strange condition. Those suffering from it will experience an irreversible chronic dissociation of their physical structure. This means they will slowly fade away, and the process is barely noticeable to others. You can still run, jump, and talk as usual. Everything seems normal. But then you'll start doing everything slightly slower than others. And then even slower than that. Until the lines between your body and the entire world become blurry. You won't be able to tell reality from dreams because they have all been shattered. So how can I possibly resist it? I mean, can you imagine? I can actually free myself from this I see medical cabin in this dream. I can forget about all the doctor's advice. I can listen and see and touch and think and understand whatever I want with my body. So although this world isn't real, this experience is priceless. Just like this moment.
She then tells us that there are things she cannot reveal to us just yet, but that she is also one of the parties after the Watchmaker's legacy and hopes that won't make us enemies. We then take a heartwarming selfie that certainly doesn't foreshadow doom. We get a text from Himiko that we should return to reality and meet up with everyone to discuss how things are going. As we make our way to ground level, we notice everyone has disappeared except for Sampo Koski. Funnily enough, Sampo expresses his disappointment in us for sticking by Firefly. However, he soon reveals himself to be not Sampo, but rather a girl who is capable of shape-shifting. She sends us and Firefly off to what she called the real dreamscape. We awaken in another dream, but this one it's different, it's eerie, it's scary, and Firefly suspects it's the real Penacony and questions what the family is hiding. As we attempt to leave, we wind up trapped in a never-ending cycle of doors before a monster known as the Memory Zone meme, something unto death, reveals itself, causing a fight to break out. The fight comes to a close after Black Swan intervenes, subduing the monster and giving us a portal to wake up to reality. After meeting with the rest of the Express, we learn Black Swan is a memo keeper for the Garden of Recollection and offered to help retrieve us after we went missing. We learn the shapeshifting girl is Sparkle, a masked fool who has infiltrated Penacony and is just here for a good time. The mysterious dreamscape she sent us to actually had nothing to do with her, but rather came from Penacony itself. Black Swan tells us that Penacony itself is a dream created by the family, whereas the real Penacony was what we experienced with Firefly in the place called the Memory Zone, also known as the Deep Sea. We then learn that the entirety of Penacony is falling into the Deep Sea, putting everyone in Penacony at risk. Well, theorizes that another entity is currently drawing external forces to destroy the family's control over Penacony, and that it most likely has something to do with the Watchmaker's invitation. Himiko then adds that the one who is responsible for tampering with Penacony and the one who sent out the nameless distress signal are most likely the same person. Wells later informs us he's been following up on reports of a man in silver armor in Penacony, which eventually led him to a message by Silverwolf in which he wants us to help uncover what the family is hiding by having us go back into the Memory Zone. She also confirms that Sam is indeed on Penacony, who has a message urging the nameless not to fall behind. If you're wondering, fall behind on what? It's this.
The situation is clear. The planet of festivities isn't what it seems on the surface. Everyone's sights, including the factions in the family, are set on the Watchmaker's legacy. Every party has its own motives, and they're attempting to thwart each other. While we still don't know what this legacy entails, it's only a matter of time before the power struggle ensnares innocent bystanders.
We then ask Black Swan to help us and be our guide in the Memory Zone, to which she obliges. As we make our way into the dreamscape, we inexplicably run into Acheron, who seems more confused by the lack of service than anything else, like what she's doing in the fucking Memory Zones. In red text, Acheron tells us she was working with the Bloodhound family to apprehend someone before she ended up here. Black Swan asks if she's lying, to which Acheron states wouldn't be possible in front of a memo keeper. We team up with her and venture deeper into the Memory Zone. However, as the Memory Zone proves to be more complicated than it appeared, Black Swan does some voodoo shit that allows her to see everything in the Memory Zone. She tells us she can see some members of the family, the other members of the Express, and somehow Firefly, who inexplicably made her way into the Memory Zone. She tells us Firefly is running from someone and that we must hurry. We eventually catch up with Firefly, where we have this touching reunion. Following Firefly's apparent death, Acheron apologizes for not unsheathing her sword, while Black Swan informs Himiko what happened, where Himiko tells Black Swan to take us back to reality, to which she says she will do. However, before we leave, Black Swan wants to investigate Firefly's case a little more through some remembrance shit that allows us to partially look at her footsteps and thoughts right before death? I don't know, bro. As we follow in Firefly's footsteps, we notice it's getting increasingly hotter, and furthermore, we find a trail of charred remains. As we run into more of Firefly's memories, we learn she had a partner called Mecha, who seemingly betrayed her halfway through, causing her to flee. When we arrive once more at the place of her death, we find the Mecha, who's the Stellaron hunter Sam, waiting for us, who warns us to leave. We fight Sam, but before we can see the end, Black Swan whisks us away to aventurine. One thing to keep in mind, however, is in the cutscene where Acheron is fighting Sam, although she's using her sword, you can actually see it's still in its scabbard. She really does not want to unsheath that sword. I wonder why. Well, Aventurine offers some insight and states that Acheron is actually an emanator who brings death and finality. Aventurine informs us that the Everflame Mansion were the ones that received the invite by the family, but the Duke Inferno was killed by Acheron, who then swiped his invites and showed up to Penacony with the music box. Black Swan then confirms everything Aventurine tells us, so we go with him once more, where he reveals to us that Robin is also dead. One final scene takes place, showing Sunday speaking with Robin. Sunday tells Sparkle to drop the act as he knows Robin is dead, to which he calls him a chicken wing boy and just leaves. Sunday speaks in riddles before addressing the watchmaker, and the story comes to a close. So I mean, it's a pretty fun story thus far, lots of things to discuss. Sunday, seemingly not really bothered by his sister's death, is somehow the least of our concerns, but it may have been a little confusing, so I mean, I wanted to summarize it before we, make other videos talking about all the talking points.